see everyone again. It feels like we just met a few hours ago.
Imagine that.
I haven't even finished my gin and tonic from last night.
So I sent out to the group last night a list of financial articles that the warrant committee voted on Wednesday night. And then as well as adding the Article 30, which was the transfer from free cash. So these are the articles that I'd recommend that the town move forward with in its determination of essential financial articles. There could potentially be some nuance related to, capital budget and the tax rate, but I'll let Nina chime in on that piece later on in the meeting. But other than that, I shared the warrant with everybody. So the articles that are selected, by and large, encompass all of our financial related articles. The only articles that do have a financial component that wouldn't move forward, again, are all those reserve policies that we talked about this year, the contributions to the stabilization fund, capital stabilization fund, and then of course the free cash one-time use projects. I think this encompasses what we need to continue operations, and will put the community in a good place if we're not able to have a fall town meeting to conduct additional business. So I suppose with that, Madam Chair, if it's all right, I would kick it over to Nina for her thoughts on those articles. And I think she also heard some updates this morning on whether or not the governor has signed a bill and what's included in that.
Right. So, and I just want to make sure, should we just go over, after you give us your input, Nina, should we go over each item and deem and summarize why it's deemed to be essential? And just have the minutes reflect that we did that review.
Yeah, I'd support that.
Madam Chair, that's a good idea. That is necessary under our court order that is currently in place. As Chris mentioned, there has been legislative action. Of course, right after we got our court order, the legislature decided to move and passed what's called the Municipal flexibility bill or something, and that is sitting in the governor's desk right now. There was a late amendment to it in the House that bears on the discussion that you're having right now. Originally, the bill was limited only to budget and the federal requirement piece. It was actually more restrictive than I previously understood it to be as it went through the iterations. That component, that whole section that limited the categories of articles that you can consider, was struck in a late amendment late yesterday. So the categories of bills that you can consider for your reduced quorum town meeting is not limited. So you can take up, there's no change in the voting quantum, and you can take up any bills that you think are necessary to continue operations of the town. That has not passed yet. We assume the governor will sign today. He has not signed yet, as far as I know. I will let Chris know as soon as he does sign. That legislation will trump the court order that we have in place. With respect to the processes needed, what the legislation does is as we've already obtained, it allows the Board of Selectmen to reduce the quorum to no less than 10% of the normal quorum requirements. There are some procedural issues. It does require the Board of Selectmen to give 7 days notice before making that vote, and requires the town clerk within 10 days of that vote to notify the Attorney General's office. Where we have this court order in place prior to this legislation passing, as I discussed with Chris a little bit later yesterday after your meeting, I am perfectly comfortable with you all going forward full steam ahead with your plan, and simply in 7 days' time having the Board of Selectmen ratify its action to reduce the quorum to 10% or 18 people. So again, because of the timing complexities here and the fact that the legislature in its vast wisdom decided to put a 7-day notice period on something, only 25 days before the end of the fiscal year, and which requires at least 2 weeks notice to get warrants out and the like. I am, as I said, I am comfortable with you all just moving forward at pace at this point. And at some point between now and town meeting, I just want you to ratify that decision to reduce the quorum to 10%.
Okay, so I think our meeting on June 18th falls within the appropriate timeline to do that?
That's fine.
Okay.
So Chris should just add that to the agenda, and you should just, that agenda should go out instead of 48 hours, that agenda should go out with that component at least 7 days, more than 7 days before that meeting.
Right, and to be honest, I don't know how everybody else feels. I am actually more comfortable selecting warrant items that we do deem financially necessary, because I think that eliminates anybody challenging why we chose certain things over others. So I am actually a lot more comfortable not going ahead with the broader guidance that may be available to us, and just making sure that we abide by the guidance that is in effect based upon the court order that we got, because that's really what we want to do. We just want to be able to run the town, and hopefully if everything goes well, we'll have another town meeting in September, but at least if we can't, we're fine.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I strongly agree. I think that the discussion has always been about limiting town meeting to those articles. I just wanted to make sure folks were aware that there's some flexibility, and you all can exert some discretion with respect to which financial articles you feel fall into that category. It does not need to be limited just to the budget, which was my previous concern.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Bob?
So I absolutely agree that this should be a very narrow and very focused set of warrant articles. I am the only one that Chris mentioned about this free cash use for one-time projects. I would like to make sure that gets included. Otherwise, because I'm not confident we're going to have a fall town meeting. And I said this to Andy on Wednesday night, I think that we get one bite at the apple this time. And so, for the things that we as a board think is important for the town to pursue in the fiscal year 21, I want to make sure we have all the money we need to get that work done. And I do not think it's wise to think that we'll be able to come back in the fall. Everything I've read about the likely increase of COVID spread in the summer and fall due to the reopening is probably real, and we should take advantage of this window and make sure we have what we need to run the town financially for the fiscal year 21.
I agree. Jim? And you're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, no, just unmuted. I'd appreciate it if the selectmen could maybe inform us a little bit more about and Chris also, about the importance of taking that action with respect to free cash, how it specifically affects the town's operations, and what the negative outcomes would be if we didn't do that now. I agree with you, Bob. I think it's highly unlikely that we're going to have a meeting this fall, also based on everything I've read, and also discussions with some of the experts. But I think that we have to be very careful and make sure that we can tell our citizens that this was really very important for the smooth functioning of the town, that would enable the town to deliver the services that they rely on. So, and I'm speaking now out of ignorance, so if you could explain to me how that works, that would be great.
So Jim, John Jeffries, just to sort of refresh everybody's memory of the past couple of years with regards to free cash and how we framed the free cash discussion. It's the models that we built and the models that we began this process with. And Dave will recall that we were sitting next to each other in that room at Carroll. It was about 105 degrees the night before town meeting 4 years ago. And we talked about consistency and predictability and being able to convey that message to the taxpayers. And I remember, like literally as if it was yesterday, Dave saying that, you know, in our business, you have to really be able to model for the unpredictable times. And I'm sure we never imagined the unpredictable times being like these, but what we have been focused on and building a foundation around is predictability and consistency, with the ability, Jim, to include these free cash items. We give Chris, we give our town accountant, and we also give our assessor the ability to model a predictable flow of the rate back to the taxpayer. And Chris, if I've left anything out of that frame, I wanted to try to be as succinct as possible. But those, to me, Jim, are the most important elements of the inclusion of free cash. So Chris, I just wanted to jump in.
Unless I misunderstood, I think all we're asking for is the one free cash article, right, Chris? Yeah. Use of 1.5 million. And the overwhelming reason to do that is if we don't do that, there will be a huge spike in citizens' tax bills.
That's correct.
Because we did it last year. Our philosophy has always been to fund the school budget at 100% and then to use the circuit breaker funds that the schools give back to us to reduce the tax rate for the following year. So it is imperative to me that we do just that. And that's what we're doing with the 1.5 million. And if you don't do it, there's going to be a huge spike in tax bills because the relief was there last year and it wouldn't be there this year. Jim?
Yeah, thank you, Robin. Is this likely to be controversial? I know that in the past at some of the town meetings, there's been a lot of back and forth about free cash. Is this something that is likely that there would be general agreement about?
We've never had disagreement on this item. I mean, it's always been an item where there would be debate is on the other three articles that we're not discussing right now, you know, and that's setting up those funds for the future. So we're purposely tabling the free cash strategy for this year. So this is something we've always done. It's always been part, even when I was on warrant, it was something we did. We've always used a certain amount of free cash, which has always been pretty much what we got back for circuit breaker.
Andy, you want to add?
Yeah, can I just make sure we're not conflating two issues? We've used an amount of free cash every year to plug the gap in the operating budget, but the free cash reduction of the tax rate, I recall, has been subject to some discussion. Typically, it's not a discussion about whether we do it or whether we don't, but it's certainly a discussion around the amount.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that, Andy. And I think that just to build upon what Robin was saying earlier, that I think the debate would come if we didn't do it, Jim. I think that the expectation for many people is there will always be an amount, as Andy just alluded to, and we've always been mindful of what that amount should be. There's always a discussion, but I think it'd be very important to include it, as we've all said earlier, as a consistent and predictable element of the town's overall financial budget.
Yeah, and I thought that the conservative thing to do with the amount would be consistent with last year's, I think it was $1.5 million that was actually approved at the town meeting. And so that on free cash on Article 30, that's where I thought we would sort of wind up. I think Dave had his hand up.
Right, Dave?
So I think this is going to be part of a broader discussion in a few minutes, but I think it goes to the plan on informing voters. And if the selectmen explain, or the warrant committee explains in the blue book, that you're using 1.5 million, just like you said, to smooth the tax rate and to stay consistent with what we've done in the past, that it's that informing the voters of what we're trying to do is exceedingly important. And if we do it in advance, then my concern is I just don't want some kind of voter backlash that we have a greatly reduced quorum and you're trying to do something that is out of the ordinary with very few amount of people. And so I think it's exceedingly important that the communication of exactly what we're doing and how we're doing it and why we're doing it will help. And the cover from the state is going to be very big in my mind, because now it's not us going off on our own to do what we deem is right, but we have top cover from the state. So if I may, later on, if I could just come back and ask again what the plan to inform voters might be.
Right, so I don't I don't see this as needing to take cover. It's something we've consistently done, and we're protecting citizens of Dover. We're making sure that they don't unnecessarily have a spike in their tax rate, which is something that's really important. And that's the only communication that needs to go out. You know, we're keeping them at a level playing field with respect to where they ended the year. And we can certainly show what would happen if we didn't use this 1.5 million to people's tax bills.
I think we're all saying the same thing. It's just,
Yes,
we're framing it in the sense of, as the words I used earlier, consistency and predictability. And as we were discussing last night, the foundation upon what these past 4 years has been all about. I just believe that the voters will understand. It's easy to communicate, it's consistent, and it falls in line within, as Nina was referring to earlier, both the measure from the court and the measure of the legislation. So I don't think it would put Jim or Dave or Felicia or any of us in an awkward position. As I said earlier, the awkward position may come if we didn't do it. So I really do think we're all saying the same thing, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, you're running out of time.
Mr. Rapetti wanted to say something, and then I think we need to move on.
Okay, I just wanted to say I agree with Dave that I think the communication is going to be very important. And I think in addition to broad communication, that we should make an effort to reach out to people that we know who have expressed an interest in this in the past. You know, I'm right off the top of my head, I'm thinking about Bonnie Akins and Tom Crowley and Charlie Long, so that they feel that they have an opportunity to discuss this with you, the members of the Board of Selectmen, and to become comfortable with it. I think that's very important. I have had some people express to me concern about a reduction in the quorum and afraid that somebody's going to pull a fast one. I've explained to people already that I am going to rule out of order anything that is not in the warrant that you fellows are approving today. And with respect to those articles that you will approve, it's really important that they feel like they have an opportunity to have any concerns or questions answered. So thank you.
Well, then, I think what we should do now is just go down the articles that have been highlighted and, you know, validate that they're deemed to be necessary financially. So Article 1 is the established salaries for the elected officials for FY 2021. And, you know, for me, it's not so much the salaries of the Board of Assessors or the Board of Selectmen, but it's the town clerk. You know, so this is really important for us as a town in order to move forward. I mean, we certainly can't move forward without our town clerk and some of the other salaries in there.
Yeah, it's right. So
Well, that one's a no-brainer.
no brainer, right? Actually, most of these are no brainers.
Right.
Okay.
You know, the next article is Article.
Madam Chair, I'm just curious, do you want to make a motion for each one as you go through to expedite things, or I guess I just offer that as a suggestion for your consideration.
Okay, we could do that. Or I was thinking we just make sure there's no discussion and then we just do one motion.
Yeah, and we should just run down them like Jim does at the town meeting. Just go right through it because again, we're running out of time.
Right. Dave, do you have a comment?
Very quickly, would it also make sense to get Nina to concur on each one, or at the end that all of these are deemed essential by town council?
Good suggestion.
I would actually object to that. This is a policy decision for the board to make, and it is only those that they deem in your elected capacity as essential. My only role for town meeting is making sure that the articles themselves are legally drafted and the procedure of adopting them are correct.
Okay, so well, let's roll, Robin.
All right, so then Article 2 is to authorize amounts for revolving funds. And it's my understanding that, you know, for the town to do business as usual, we need these revolving funds set up. We're
Right.
going to get permits and fees in there, and we need to be able to utilize that. Is that correct, Chris?
Yep.
That's correct.
And none of these revolving funds have any issues. Number 3 is the operating budget for 2021. And I deem that imperative for the town to be able to function. And again, the budget we're gonna present is the one that has been adjusted for COVID that was presented at our meeting 2 meetings ago. And that is going to be the budget that's in the blue book and the budget that we're going to discuss at I don't know whether to call them open hearings, but at
Open forum, an open forum.
Communication forums.
Yep.
Oh, any argument on that?
Nope.
Article 4 is capital budgets. And again, we use the capital budget to maintain our infrastructure and to maintain our assets. And I also deem the items listed as essential for us to continue as a town.
Good.
Any argument on that?
Just a quick comment, Robin. Jim, is it your anticipation to do the same roll call as you would asking for a hold? Just run right through the items, asking for a hold, and then approve it at the end? Will we stay with the same format?
I'm sorry, was that question directed to me, John?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I'm not sure, John. Dave and I have been discussing this. Doing the roll takes more time. And I was thinking that I may actually wait until the day of the meeting to see what the weather looks like and to see how many people we have attending, to make a decision about the format that I'll use. If the weather is not great and we have a small group, I'll probably just do it as a single motion. If, on the other hand, we have a large number of people and based on the hearing, the communication hearing that Robin referred to, it looks like there might be some controversy, then I'll do the traditional method of calling out each item, because in the long run, that's more expeditious for proceeding through the town meeting. So at this point, I'm going to need more information about how controversial these are going to be with the citizens, and also a better idea of what our attendance is going to look like.
That makes sense. Then Article 6 is an appropriation for road construction, reconstruction, and improvement. And I think this is our ability to receive Chapter 90 funds. Is that correct, Chris?
That's correct.
So that's really important to the taxpayers. And again, Chapter 90 funds will allow us, we get funds from the Commonwealth to help repair our roads and the infrastructure that we have. Then Article 15 is the appropriation of 2021 reserve fund, and usually we have $200,000, I believe, or is it 250? That's
50.
250 that's put aside just in case we have unforeseen bills that come up, or that our budgeting is not sufficient to cover emergencies that come up. So again, that's an important item for us to conduct our business. Article 16 is unpaid bills. We need to pay our unpaid bills, otherwise vendors may not want to do business with the town of Dover. So I am deemed that one to be essential. And then the last one is Article 30, which is the transfer from free cash to stabilize the tax rate. And again, for me, this is imperative because especially during times like this, I do not want citizens of Dover to have this unnecessary spike in their tax bills because we aren't being consistent with what we've done in the past.
Right.
Bob?
So I agree with all that. And my question really is around Article 14.
All right, so let's go back to Article 14. I have a hard time with Article 14. That's the appropriation for one-time projects. Only because, and I mean, what we could do is add it and then see how much pushback we get at open forums. I don't want anybody in the town feeling as though the Board of Selectmen have pushed something through, given a small quorum. I completely recognize that these items are imperative to continue our modernization, but this is the one article that I think we could get pushback on. So I am happy to include it, see what happens, and then we could move to dismiss it.
Okay, I'm happy with that. I mean, this is the one bite at the apple strategy.
Right.
You know, these really are important projects that I mean, the water main maintenance and repair stuff. I mean, this is really
that one's very important.
right.
You know, but some of the other ones, I could see there being a lot of pushback. Like,
well, if you want to go down, so
the organizational assessment.
That's probably the weakest, but we're going to have to do work in the townhouse to make sure that we meet COVID-related guidelines. And the technology-related projects is just a continue. It's essentially it's almost a capital item. It's essentially continuing, just improving our infrastructure, moving along on the project side. I think the weakest one is the organizational assessment piece. But nevertheless, they all take us, they're all reasonably, and they're not reason, they'll be critical, they would be critical items on our project list for 2021. And if, you know,
And it's certainly going to delay our modernization efforts.
yeah. So if, I'd be very happy if, you know, we include it, and if there's pushback, or when maybe we can pare it down to the 2 or 3, maybe we could leave out the organizational assessment piece.
I think that would make me feel a lot better to take out the organizational assessment right now.
And I think the other things are very defensible.
Right, and then see if we get pushback or not. Jim, I can see you're trying to say something, so.
Well, I agree with you, Robin. I think that you're going to have to proceed with a high degree of caution. And again, I think it's going to depend on the ability to communicate effectively with the entire town and people who might be particularly interested in these items. So I'm sure you fellas probably know who has taken these on as projects that they're concerned about in the town. And I would appreciate it if you could reach out to them in particular, or that they're aware of this and they have an opportunity to be heard. Just so you know, the consultants have told me that the shorter the meeting, the safer the meeting.
Right.
And so I view my primary mission to get people in and out of there safely and as quickly as possible. So from my perspective, I ideally want to avoid anything that's going to engender debate.
No, I completely agree with you. So I think let's start with including it without the organizational assessment. Reach out to those individuals that we know would want to discuss this, encourage them to attend the communication forums, because I think it would be good for other citizens to hear what they have to say. And then I don't want debate at town meetings. So if we feel as though we're going to get debate on this, we need to move to dismiss it at town meeting.
Robin, the only thing that I would add is to think about the way we've tried to package some things along the lines of our biggest issue prior to the COVID, and we spent many, many times, was reducing the number of articles and consolidating articles. So if there are only 6 items in this on the list and removing the organizational assessment, I understand the practicality of it, but the logic, if we're going to include the list, my feeling would be leave it on the list and give us the flexibility of removing that at a later date. What do you think about that? You only got $415,000 in those total 6 items.
I mean, I can go either way. I'm just telling you, if there's pushback from, and we need to reach out to those people that are going to have an issue with this. If we get pushback, we have to dismiss this article.
I'm sorry. I mean, it's majority rule, right? We're talking about the guys who've been negative on most of this stuff have never carried the day. So
Right.
it gets to be a majority
We
vote.
need to listen to them. I
agree. I agree.
But I think, Robin, to Bob's point, if we have it, if we leave it in, it gives Jim and David the ability to ask us to remove it. It gives them the flexibility. If we take it out, we just lose that option, and then we just don't have it. So it
wasn't suggesting taking it out. I think the one item that I have a hard time saying it's necessary for us to operate as a town is the organizational assessment. So unless you guys can tell me that it's imperative that this gets done, I see the townhouse space reconfiguration being really important, especially in light of COVID. We need assistance. We want to try get people back to work, and we want them to be safe. But the organizational assessments, and we've already done some of it, I think we can continue as a team to move it forward, just not as fast as maybe if we got an outside consultant. But Chris, I'm
So,
interested to
Yeah,
hear what you have to, and then
if
I'll go back to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I might add, I think from the organizational assessment standpoint, my perspective is we have a few unknowns as it relates to what our staffing may look like, in the next 12-month period in some pretty substantial and critical departments. And so I think that money could be helpful if we needed to bring someone in, either if there was a change that wanted to be made in the operational structure of either of those departments, or if we just wanted someone to help assist on how we could bring someone in to help assist with those departments while we determine what our long-term staffing strategy looks like. Now, there's nothing set in stone, but as I look across the landscape of our staff and who we have in place, there's potential for changes in some of our larger departments.
So would you suggest keeping it in for now?
But I also, on the same token, know that we have a professional services line item within the operating budget that could be utilized. I just wanted to add that because I do think that that's a substantial concern, and it does affect the day-to-day of the town. So, if the board wanted to include it, I view that there is some merit to including it.
My feeling is, Chris, it's $150,000 of $415,000 in this block of project lists. And in the overall amount of money that we're appropriating, it's not a big item. It's not something, it's not a, we've talked about it in different ways. It's not something we're trying to sneak by. It's something that could be a very valuable tool. It's not, it's not a pet project of somebody that they've been lobbying for a long time. It could be very valuable to us. So that's why I wanted to take a second look at it.
yeah. So I'm going to come back to John's original proposal, which would be just to leave it in, and then if we get pushback or if our judgment changes as we move this process along, we modify. And I also agree with both Jim and Dave that articulating our positions on these various things in an open forum or two is going to be critical. And so that we can convince people that we're asking them to support an FY21 budget that reflects our times, is fiscally conservative, and is really very, very close to the budget that they passed in FY20.
Last year.
Yeah, last May, yes. Dave?
Thank you. I've actually got 3 comments. The first one would be a suggestion that if it says townhouse space reconfiguration, if you could add COVID-19 into that, that is going to immediately explain to people exactly what it is. The second one is, I think a lot of controversy, and again, I have a concern as both a citizen and as the assistant moderator that the staffing part is new. It's new spending, and the court order, which may be, I guess this is overdone by the legislation, but Nina, I don't know what the legislation says, but the court order says it's essential to the functioning of the town government during the next 6 months. And these may not be essential. And that's the determination. John, you use, it could be useful. Could is not a need. It is not essential. And that's where we've got to draw the line. And if it goes into debate, then I echo what Jim is saying. We're trying to have a speedy town meeting here. That is the essential thing. And this is going to become, or could, it has a higher likelihood of becoming controversial. It may even bring people out to the point where we go over the 60 safety limit, and now we have accomplished nothing. So if my humble suggestion is, If you need that for the townhouse, put that line item in. But the others, we can wait either till a special or next year. I know it's not ideal, but it's also not essential. So thank you for hearing me out.
Right, so the water main project is essential. We have had a lot of issues with water mains, and we need to address the infrastructure. I mean, we just may not have enough funds if we don't keep that in there. But I mean, that's what I'm struggling with. I view a bunch of these as nice to haves, not need to have.
So perhaps if you put townhouse COVID-19 space reconfiguration, water main maintenance and repair, keep those in there, you're getting half of what you want. And that what I just heard is that's what's needed. And since you're going through this roll call and documenting what is essential, just consistency might help.
Right, and I think it's important to point out the townhouse space reconfiguration isn't solely COVID. It does help us with COVID, but we came up with this project prior to COVID being in effect because we really, the workflow of the staff is not optimal, but now COVID has added a new dimension to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there require changes to open safety, continued open safety.
Jim?
I think Andy had his hand up earlier. Andy, did you have a comment? And you're muted, Andy.
Yeah, I was just going to mention in response to Dave's comment that that's certainly something that will be in the Blue Book write-up as far as the additional and that was specifically on the townhouse reconfiguration, that one of the additional concerns is to respond to the COVID challenges in the townhouse space.
Yeah. And let me just say, I agree entirely with Dave Haviland. I think that we've been entrusted by our citizens to try to act in a very extreme situation to make sure that the town will continue to be able to deliver services. I can see that some of these items are desirable, but based on what I've heard so far, I have a hard time concluding that they're essential. And I think that where we're structuring this meeting to be very truncated with a reduced quorum, that we need to be sure that the trust that the citizens are placing in our hands is used to deal solely with essential items. And I feel very strongly about that, but it is ultimately the Board of Selectmen's call. My role as moderator is simply going to be to run the meeting. I do not set the warrant.
Bob?
Nina, does the legislation that the governor may or may not pass, my understanding is, that broadens the window of what we can include?
Correct. There is no limitation. There is no requirement with respect to items being necessary or essential.
All right, so thank you. So coming back to this, then I'm going to come back to the point that these are things that are, in my view, critically necessary to move the town forward. And adding them in the way that John originally suggested makes sense to me because we can't, for an extra 5 minutes on presuming that there's actually controversy about this. I would rather have them in and test the theory and then make a decision afterward. These are things that have been thoughtful, that have been thought about, and that are important to continue to move the town forward. And if we have the opportunity, right, if we have the opportunity, and we may have the opportunity with this legislation to get all of the money we need to continue to move the town forward, and if essential is not part of the criteria, then it should be included and we could review it as we go through time.
Bob, there's a difference between having authority to do something and doing something that is right under the circumstances. And the fact that the legislature is potentially giving us authority to take action doesn't mean that we should do it. And I think that John hit the nail on the head when he said that, and you have too, you've used the words critical for moving forward. And I can understand people who are you spend a lot of time and you'd like to continue the projects. You've already made some great accomplishments. Chris has done an outstanding job, and Kate. but I cannot say, if people ask me, I cannot say based on what I've heard so far that this is essential to the government. And we're weighing, again, we are weighing the safety of our citizens in terms of trying to have this meeting progress as quickly as possible. This is not a regular town meeting where people are going to have the luxury of spending an hour debating whether we spend $50,000 on a police cruiser and then we approve 66% of our budget for the school system without blinking. The fact that these numbers are small doesn't mean that they're not going to be controversial.
Right.
So
Sorry.
the
Could I say
town
something?
clerk would like to say something?
Thank you. I think one of the things that we really have to be very careful and remember is that what we may deem to be essential and certainly moving the town forward is very important. One of the things that we have to remember is that the perception of what we do in these circumstances is not going to be forgotten in a month, in 2 months. It's going to hang in there for years. And if people feel that we tried to maybe do something that wasn't quite essential by their sense, we're going to all be very badly perceived. And we have to think about that going forward. It's not fair to the citizens if we don't think and address how they may feel.
Thank you, Felicia. So I think John's point and my point and Robin's point earlier is, rather than us sit here today trying to make this determination, we have it included, we have the open forums, we do the write-ups, and if we get pushback, we make a decision. So I don't think we should get the additional information before we decide, not decide with our own mindsets of what we think may or may not, people may or may not react to. That was always the purpose of the open hearing. The open forums are going to supplement the open hearing. Based on the feedback that we get, we come back and we review. I think that's the most, for me, that's the sensible way to go forward.
So my position does differ from your and John's, because I truly believe the organizational assessments are nice to have and they should be removed from this article.
Okay, so how do we stop? How do we end this?
It's clearly there's a lot of debate from us. I say what we do is I would vote to take out the organizational assessments. If we could vote specifically on that, because I just don't deem that as need to have. I deem that as nice to have. And I, if we get pushback, if there's any debate at town meeting, I would stand up and vote to dismiss this article, because that's not what we're trying to do at town meeting. We're trying to pass a budget so that the town can operate.
John?
Dave?
Right now, the governor hasn't signed the bill. And so are we not still working under the court order and what we represented to the court?
We are.
So what was represented to the court was essential and only essential. And I ask you to consider that, because if we've heard about this law getting passed, and what if the governor says no, or what if there's a last minute hiccup? We have represented to the court certain things, and under the current condition, we should not be including something of this nature. So again, thank you for hearing my opinion.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah, it is a good point, David. Thank you. And Jim, listening from I think the proper thing to do is defer from a legal standpoint to you and with regards to this matter, because it clearly, you under the essential label, you have convinced me that an organizational assessment is going to be very hard to defend. So I essentially would defer from a legal standpoint to you, to your judgment, and certainly as Nina and David just articulated, that under the court order, we're operating under a different guideline than Bob and I were referring to in utilizing the whole article approach, if you will. So my feeling personally is to defer to Jim, and I would follow your guidance on removing that.
So I don't think Jim
Item 3,
is in
right?
a position to make a decision, so
No, but I'm saying
I mean, so
wait, on what he said to us this morning.
you know, I think we're gonna have these forums. I think we should take out the $150,000 and see what pushback we get, if any of the other, because whether we like it or not, we have to reconfigure the townhouse. We needed to do it before, but now COVID has upped the ante for us. And the water main repairs, though, that is a big issue for us. I mean, we've spent a fortune. I think everybody knows the center of town was shut down for a couple of days because our team was working tirelessly to try and find the leaks. You know, we had to cut water off to the Charles River School. It created issues for them. So this is important for us to understand the condition of that infrastructure, where the leaks may be.
Okay, so we agree that we're going to include Article 14 with the exception of point number 3.
Right.
Yeah. For me, Bob, it just becomes a risk-reward probability conversation or question, and I've been convinced, listening to Jim and Dave and the rest, that, and certainly Felicia, with regards to the essential label, removing the organizational assessment, it makes the probability significantly higher of there being no debate, and moving the whole package, and not losing sight of the whole package is our responsibility, not this just one particular item.
Okay, so then we're done, right?
Right.
I see a lot of nods.
Right. So then I say I'm going to make a motion that we include in the special town meeting the following warrant articles: Article 1, Article 2, Article 3, Article 4, Article 6, Article 14, Article 15, Article 16, and Article 30. And that the Board of Selectmen have deemed these articles to be financially necessary for us to continue to run the town in 2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Hi, Bob Springer.
Hi, Robin.
Hi, John Jeffries.
Okay. All right, and then I guess the next item on the agenda is, I think we should just set a date, some dates now, for those informational forums. And I do think we need more than one. And I think we should start next week, and we should have them at different times, like maybe one during the day, one in the evening. Bob?
So that's exactly the model that we followed when we did the series of Carol presentations. We did both, say, the mid-morning and mid and early evening forums, and we got different audiences, obviously, at different forums, and it proved to be quite effective. So if we could do, what do we have, 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah, we should do 2 sessions each week in order to get it out. Because what happened, the other experience was, in the beginning we had very little participation, but as the word got out, we had more and more attendance at those meetings. And Chris, all this will be on video, right? So we'll also be able to publicize the fact that all this information is out there using the various media. So we should be able to, based on the past performance, we should be able to hit a relatively broad swath of the public if we follow that methodology.
Right. A low-tech way to get the word out would be to do a banner as well,
Yep.
everybody.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
And use the social media accounts to point and get our nodes, our email nodes, busy in promoting these forums.
right. Nina?
Thanks. The one thing I wanted to mention is typically, and I think this is, we didn't detail this for the court, but this is kind of how we were envisioning or framing this, is that these informational meetings would be used for the presentations for each of the articles so that the town meeting wouldn't get taken up with 10 or 15 or 20-minute presentations, for instance, reports from the warrant committee and the like. So I don't know if you want to, I just would keep that in mind. This is certainly informational outreach, but there should be some formality perhaps around giving the actual presentation. So I don't know if you want to set kind of one date for that and then have that be referenced and up on the website for folks to view as kind of the official presentation about these articles. Or I'm just picturing the warrant committee having to do their report and presentation, 6 different times between now and town meeting. The audiences for each of those presentations are different, and that may affect the information that comes out at each of those sessions. So that's my concern about having multiple sessions where the formal presentations are made and questions are asked. So I have questions about that and no helpful answers.
So Felicia, your hand's still raised. Do you want to say something or?
No,
Okay.
my hand is not raised anymore, sorry.
Okay, no worries. I just didn't know how to unraise it, so I just wanted to make sure.
Madam Chair, could I propose that the board set up 2 pre-town meetings or open hearings or informational sessions, one on the 11th, and then one, we use a portion of the already scheduled board meeting on the 18th, and those will be the 2 formal sessions where the board runs through every single article, allows for questions, allows for concerns. And then throughout that 2-week period, we also heavily publicize the Blue Book, other presentations that we have, the dates of these informational sessions on the website, on social media, and our other communication channels.
I think that's a good idea. I think maybe we could also add, and I don't know if people will take us up on this, but maybe also the week of the 15th and the week of the 22nd, just questions and answers. The Board of Selectmen, the staff, the warrant committee are available to answer questions on any of the warrant articles after people have had the opportunity to look at the presentations. So the meeting would be as long as how many people show up, but we won't go through everything. We'll just ask for questions so that we can answer people. And maybe we also give people the ability to email questions ahead of time, and we could answer those. But more informal, but a way, because I'm making the assumption that all of the presentations will be on the website as well for people to look at, right? So. Bob?
2 thoughts. We need to make sure we have mid-morning meetings set up, mid-morning forums for folks. And the second thought was, we don't necessarily have to have all of the members of the Board of Selectmen at these. We could run it more like the task force where we have representatives, so that we don't have to go through I don't know if we need to post formal meetings to do this. So in order to be able to do this sort of efficiently. And again, I didn't have to worry about that on the Carol because we didn't have quorums, board quorums, but it might be a way of also doing it. To me, the more opportunities that we present to the public to share information about this, the better off we're going to be at the hopefully really short town meeting.
Well, the idea is to publicize these. So, they're going to be public. People are going to know they're around. So I think if everybody can't make it, they can't make it. But, we need to have a representative from the board there, a representative from warrants, a representative from the town staff so that we know what questions came up and we get a sense of.
Jim or Dave, we want to have it.
Right. It's open to everybody and we like to encourage people to ask questions.
Okay.
So Chris, I agree. We should have two formal ones. The 11th and the 18th sounds great. Maybe the 11th we could do in the middle of the day, a different time. Justine's always saying that she needs morning meetings, so.
We'll reach out to, I'll reach out to you to coordinate the.
Okay, all right, that sounds great.
But I also just quickly, have we?
And Andy, because it's important that Warren can be there.
Are we going with the 22nd at this point for town meeting? I know that was still a question last night.
I think we're waiting. I think we're hoping for the 29th, but Felicia's gonna work her charms and magic at the region. She said she had friends.
I already did. My
What
charms
an
are
answer.
all used up.
You're the
We
best.
have the 29th and the 30th if we need the rain date.
Felicia, you're a saint.
Thanks, Felicia. Right, so it'll be the 29th, which gives us a little more time.
I
Yeah,
want to see
should put
the umbrella.
Jim, Andy, in the blue book, you have to say, the meeting will be held in light rain. Make sure you have your galoshes and rain clothes and umbrellas.
Yeah,
Will do.
Andy, Dave and I have been working on an introduction to the Blue Book, talking about the special circumstances, and we hope to be able to circulate that all to you this weekend.
Great.
First, I wanted to run it by our medical consultants, and then once they approve it, then we'll be able to send it to all of you as well, so you can take a look at it and comment on it.
That's great. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And that will be everybody in this room. I'll be sending it to all of you. Nina, is that okay if I'm sending it to the entire board, or should I just send it to Robin?
It's okay if you send it to the entire board. What I would ask is that the board just reply to you directly instead of replying all to each other. So
Okay.
if they have comments, they just need to make them to you individually.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So, Chris or Kate, we need to apologize to the people on the task force because we haven't shown up. And it's 10:37.
All right, I think we're done. I think we have a plan. So we're gonna coordinate information sessions. We now know the meeting is the 29th, rain or shine.
30th is a fallover date, spillover date.
If they're severe thunderstorms, which I am told by the weather gods that doesn't happen during the day. I don't know if anybody was awake at 5 a.m. There were severe thunderstorms at 5 a.m.
So Robin, you can't wear your yellow galoshes. That's verboten. You can't do it.
Oh, Bob, I now have sloggers. They're made out
Oh.
of plastic bottles.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting. When we get into your footwear, it's time to go.
Because Kate's gonna start. She has complimentary footwear to meet mine. So I second that. All in favor?
Hi, Bob.
Robin Hunter.
John Jeffries. Thank you, everyone.